started this years ago, I just looked at my budget of where I could cut to get down to I could put $1,000 away. Now this $1,000 is not an investment. It's not going to go into a fund to make more money. It's really just there for life's emergencies that you would normally put on a credit card. So it should be attached to your checking account. It could be in cash in your house, whatever works best for you, but it should be available to you when needed. So $1,000 emergency fund. Now later on in this process, as you go through the baby steps, you will build up to a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, but in the beginning, $1,000. And that's just for car repairs that are unexpected, medical bills, those things in life that can throw you curves if you don't have that little bit of cushion. So $1,000. A couple other suggestions you can, if you really feel like you can't cut anything from your budget, is to start selling things, host a garage sale, get a part-time job for a little bit. Dave Ramsey always recommends delivering pizza. I know my brother-in-law did that when they were starting their financial journey, and he made like $1,500 a month. And he only did it for a couple months, but it was enough to get them back to an emergency fund, but as well as to give themselves some cushion. So, you know, whatever it takes just to get that in and just set that up from the get-go. The second part of the budget is to pay off debt. Now, this is what most people enter into a budget for because they have debt. They've looked at their bills, they've looked at the interest rate that they're paying, and they're just frustrated. And so getting out of debt, you didn't get in debt in a day, you're not going to get out of debt in a day. But when you start the process and that snowball starts to happen, you'll be surprised at how much peace that gives you, as well as just kind of breathing room that you know that you're making headway into correcting the debt situation. So I've done an example, and I took some different things. So I went online and I looked at what the average debt was for a household in America, and I was kind of shocked because it was consumer debt, not considering your home or your mortgage, and it was $123,000. So that is the average in the US. The income average in the US was $63,000. So you can see right from the get-go there's a little bit of discrepancy. Now granted, some people have no debt, some people have more debt than they make. But those were averages, so that's what I used for my example here. So for the debt, I just kind of took and said, okay, well, you know, for an average, most households have 4 credit cards. Not saying that they have a balance on all 4. 2 auto loans, 2 student loans, and then personal loan and IRS are, you know, not as common as the other one. So I took, in my example, I took 4 credit cards and looked at the balance. You need to write down the interest rate because interest rate is really important in this example, and then the minimum payment. 2 auto loans, and these were probably even a little smaller because most auto loans are $450 to $650, which I have not had a car payment in years, so I was a little shocked at that. But so in my example, I did $18,000 and a $10,000 loan. Student loans average anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000. Of course, it depends on your level of education and how you paid for college. But so in my example, I used $21,000 and $22,000. The average interest rate are between 5 and 7%, so I did one at each. Personal loan, $5,000 at a 4.5% because that's usually at a better rate. And then I didn't put anything down for IRS because their interest rate is calculated very differently. And if the IRS is in your snowball, it's almost as beneficial to move it up because they will multiply that interest rate much differently than a consumer bank would. So the first thing you do is write everything down, including the interest rate, and you total it up. So in my example, the balance is $85,600, and a minimum payment to pay on each one of these every month would be $1,030. So once you put it all down, and I'm telling you, this is probably going to be the most difficult part of this process, is really just pulling it all together and looking at it. It's very easy with online banking and e-statements just to look at the balance and a very small minimum payment, which is usually maybe 10% of the balance, and you can, you know, kind of just stay in a happy place. A couple of things though that you do want to do. You do want to look at your complete statement every month, and that includes every single transaction. Really go through your transactions. When I started this process, I realized I had duplicate billings. I had different ones on there where I had gone to a restaurant, and then I had the restaurant for the night that I went, and then I had the same bill the next day. So it's very easy for someone to either double bill you or to somehow use your card. My card got used at an IHOP in Atlanta. I'm like, I've not been to Atlanta lately. So, I would not have known that if I had not gone through every transaction. So what I do is I save my receipts, and at the end of the month, I print out my statement. I go through each transaction. I dispute anything that is not mine. I've also set up alerts on the 2 credit cards that I currently have and my checking account for anything that looks unusual. So I just got an alert about a couple months ago that said, did you just pay for a beach vacation on your card? I'm like, no, I did not. And that was 1,000 something that someone had used my card. My business card, somebody had opened up 6 different Netflix accounts. Obviously not mine. But those are the things that if you put alert, it will save you a lot of time and energy getting them cleared up later, because you can catch it right in the beginning where they still are trying to approve the transaction, and you can shut that card down. So just a great tip while you're going through this journey is to put those alerts on, and that way it's going to help you to get ahead of any things that you're not paying for things that you didn't do. And I know there were times in my life where I didn't even want to look at it. Like, I knew I had gone rogue. I knew I had spent a lot of money, and I really just didn't want to look at it. But at the end of the day, I had to start looking at it, because the minute I saw the interest rate and what that was doing to the balance, that is when I got on board 110%. And I have not had a credit card with interest since. Right now I have 2 that are on a promotional no interest. They will both be paid off beforehand, because it really is very discouraging when you look at the interest rate. So once you have written everything down, then you're going to rank them from the smallest to the largest. This is called the snowball method. There's 2 different ways that you hear kind of people talk about budgeting. One is the snowball, which is Dave Ramsey, which is the one I use, and I feel like it was the most efficient. There's another one called the avalanche method, where you take the bill that has the highest interest rate and you start that first. So in this example, it would be the credit card with $5,000 on it, an interest rate of 24%. That would be your first. And then you would go, in that order of interest rate. The example I'm going to give you is with the snowball method, because it really does give you traction and wins in the beginning. And I don't know about you, but if you're doing something and you're really, on top of it, and you're working the system and you're not seeing a win, it can be very discouraging and you want to give up. So I like the quick wins first, and then that way it just starts that momentum in paying off your bills. So in this example, minimum payments on all of the debt was $1,030. And then if you go to your fixed expenses and your lifestyle, you kind of have to see where your income is versus your payout. So in this example, I just kind of took averages here. So fixed expenses was $1,950, and those are just basically your 4 walls: rent, utilities, rent, utilities, clothing, and food. Oh my gosh, I should know that. Lifestyle is an area that you can really minimize when you're trying to pay more towards debt, or when you're trying to build up that initial emergency fund. So groceries, eating out, clothing. Now, clothing is a 4-wall, but usually, unless it's a coat for winter or new shoes for a growing child, clothing can really be managed either by buying secondhand, buying online, or swap groups, different things that you can do to maintain this budget, just while you're getting out of debt. And then, of course, you can, add to this fund later on as you feel more comfortable. So this is everything that would be considered lifestyle. So subscriptions, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, entertainment, family fun nights, family date nights, things like that, going to movies, things like that. So 1,875. And again, this is an area that you can really cut down just to get your momentum going. Debt was 1,030. I'm not putting anything for emergency fund or sinking fund yet. We're going to kind of back into those. So the average is of all the bills is $4,855, and if you look at the average income in the United States, it's $5,250 a month. So you see right there, you have a difference of $395. So the first 3 months, that $395 would go into the emergency fund and fund the emergency fund. Now, if you did bring down some of your lifestyle ones, you canceled some subscriptions, you didn't buy clothes for a month, you really stopped eating out and just ate at home, and you ate really frugally, you could easily shave enough out to do this emergency fund in 1 to 2 months. But just to say it took you 3 months, then that $395 would go into that $1,000 emergency fund until it was paid. Then sinking funds are something that you're not going to begin with, but you're going to eventually want to have. So a sinking fund is a savings account for something that's a known. Christmas, school supplies, a vacation that you have planned, medical bills, things like that you know you're going to have, but you just don't know where that money is going to come from. So instead of waiting all year and then it's Christmas in December, so you charge $2,000 and you spend the rest of the time paying that off. So if you say, I'm going to spend $2,000 for Christmas, and that includes everything, you know, going to see a Christmas play, Christmas decorations, Christmas gifts, things like that, then you take that $2,000, you divide it by the 12 months, and that's what you put away each month, so that when Christmas comes this year in 2020, you have the money put away. I have 4 different sinking funds right now. I've just added 5 and 6. So I love sinking funds. It just gives you peace of mind to know that the money's there. But in the beginning, when you're kind of getting your momentum done with your debt, don't worry too much about sinking funds. Really kind of get that momentum going with debt, and then as you start that momentum and some money frees up, then start to fund your sinking funds. So sinking funds can be at a different bank. For me, at my credit union, I can divide my savings account into savings goals. So when you divide it into goals, so if for instance I want $2,000 in Christmas, I write that in as my goal. The bank tells me how much I need to save every month to make that goal, and then when I get paid, after my bills are paid, then I just transfer that money into the account. For my holiday gifts account, I do use that for birthdays as well. I plan in my budget how many birthdays, that comes out of the amount that I'm going to put into my sinking fund. So for an example, if I'm planning to put $300 a month in my sinking fund, but I have 2 birthdays that I'm going to spend $35 each for in this month, that's $70. So I'm actually going to be putting $230 into my sinking fund, because I'm going to take out the $70 that I'm spending this month. And if you do the Every Dollar app by Dave Ramsey, you can actually create a fund. There's a little piggy bank icon, and that helps you with your beginning balance, what you've used, what you've added, and then what your new balance is. So it's just a second way that you can monitor sinking funds. Okay, so let's go back to the debt example, because this is really where the magic happens. So when you, in this example for the first month that we've already funded our emergency fund and we're going to start on our debt snowball, I ranked the credit card. So credit card number 4 has my lowest balance. The minimum payment is currently $10 and it's at 21% interest. So you take the credit card, the balance, plus the interest, minus the payment. So in this case, the $10 minimum payment I was already making, plus the $395, that is the extra money between my expenses and my income. So it means this month I'm going to make a $405 payment. So the next month, my new balance is going to be $195. So that's the $600 minus the $405 is $195. Now I have to calculate back in the interest rate, because the interest rate is going to add to that. So my new balance isn't going to be $195 as far as my payoff. I have to add in the interest rate. So to calculate your interest rate, the 21% is called an APR. So that's a yearly rate. But to calculate how much you're really going to pay in interest for that month, you take your yearly rate, you divide it by 365, so it becomes a daily rate. So in this example, it's 0.057. So when I multiply the 195 by 0.57, I'm paying an interest on this account $11.11 per month on my new balance of 195. So this would be my new balance, and then my payment would be to pay that off because I'm already paying the 405 towards this. So because this is less than the 405, I get to go to my next one, which is $1,500. Now I did make a $20 payment the month prior, so my new balance would be $1,480. When I add in my 18% interest, it's 0.049, and my new balance would be $1,553. I take my $20 payment plus the overage from my first payment, which is $198.89, and that is my new payment on my second card. This one goes away because I paid that off, and that money that I paid from this one rolls into the second one. So when this one's paid off, then it goes to the next one. When you add back in the interest, it's really kind of discouraging, but that was my aha moment to say, I realize on this credit card, what you would pay in interest is $70. It was $72. So when you look at that $1,500, it actually goes up. The new balance would be $1,553. So you did make a $20 payment, but then you're actually paying $73 rounded in interest. So your balance is going up, not down. And that's really where I got really gazelle intense and I was done with interest rates. And then you're going to do this example for each one of your cards. So when you look at student loans, they're usually the biggest and they're usually going to be your last thing, and the interest rate is usually the lowest. Depending on how your student loans were structured, some are subsidized, some are not subsidized. It depends on a lot of situations on how the loans were taken out, but some loans, the interest rate begins the day you take out the loan, but the payment doesn't start until you're, I think, 6 to 9 months out of school. So if at all possible while you're in school is, first of all, to not have student loans, but if that's not your possibility, then you really want to start making payments right away, because if not, that interest is accruing the whole time. So say you took out a loan your first semester freshman year, you graduated 4 years later, which most people graduate in 5, not 4 years, then that 7% interest is being charged from day one. So you're 5 years into interest before you even start to make a payment. So that can be super discouraging, and that's where the epidemic of student loans in the United States is happening, because you get out of school and the income does not account for this payment. So it can be a change of owning a home, moving out, whatever it might be. To see this example, there is a website called, let me see where I wrote it down, thesimpledollar.com, and that will help you to calculate the interest rate. But if you just take your interest rate that's on your credit card statement and divide it by 365, which is the number of days in the year, you come up with the percentage, the daily rate, and then you just multiply that by your balance, and that tells you what your interest is going to be on your statement. So it's an easier way to calculate it. And then I just did the math right down here. So it's APR divided by the number of days in the year. Now, some credit card statements do 360 days out of the year. They take out holidays, and then others do 365. I just did the 365 because that is actually the most common, equals your daily interest rate. And in this example is 0.057. Okay. So that is how the debt snowball works. That's how your emergency fund works. I just kind of want to revisit sinking funds a little bit, because sinking funds are kind of a newer thing for me, and I really love them. I went through a year in 2018 where I had a lot of dental work done, and I felt like I was constantly putting on a credit card, waiting for insurance to reimburse me, then paying off what I'd put on my credit card, and I just was like, if this is my new reality, then this is what I need to do. So I started to develop a sinking fund for that. I've always kind of had a Christmas fund, but it was not super structured. And then I started another one for vacation. And so my vacation fund is something that I enjoy. It's something it's worth saving for. And I have the philosophy that if you save for it, you can do it. So Savings gives you permission to spend, and I am not naturally a saver. My husband is a saver. I am not. I'm a spender. So for me to want to save and to actually enjoy watching these funds grow is kind of newer for me because I'm really not a saver. Thank God my husband is, because he saves in another account that I can't touch because I would probably want to spend it. So works out well. And then a couple of just notes overall on the budgeting system. You know, I see a lot in the group, the chat groups, and I listen to Dave Ramsey's podcast quite often, and it's very rare when the husband and wife or the partners or whatever it might be, your relationship status, to be on the same page for budgeting, because budgeting is super personal, it's emotional, it's habit driven, it's all the things that make it very difficult to stick to a budget and to have somebody else agree. So if your spouse is not on board, please don't take that as I'm not going to do it, because they will get on board when they start to see the results that you're getting. The other part is that have an accountability partner. So even if your spouse is not your accountability partner, have somebody in your life, whether it be a friend or a sibling, family member, whatever it might be, that holds you accountable to stay on budget, who questions when you spend a couple $100 at Target. Was that in your budget? So you need that accountability. The second thing is to check into your budget weekly. When you set up your budget for the month, it's really a work in progress. It's something that you're estimating your income, you're estimating your expenses. You really don't see the unforeseen unbudgeted items that are going to hit you that month, but they're going to hit you. So it's really important that you check into your budget often. The third thing is cash envelopes. So if you follow Dave Ramsey or have not, or just listen to his podcast, he talks about cash envelopes, and it's impossible to overspend a cash envelope. So when you first set up your budget, your lifestyle items should be pulled out in cash, and you use those for cash. Groceries, eating out, giving, personal care, allowance, entertainment should be pulled out in cash envelopes. I have 6 different ones that I use as cash envelopes. They can be as simple as a regular envelope. I've seen people take bill statements, envelopes, and use those. I use laminated envelopes that we sell in our shop because I found it very difficult to open and close the envelopes. Money was falling out. It was messy, and it just wasn't motivating to me. So I started making my own laminated envelopes, and then I started getting requests for them, so we put them into our shop, and our shop is called Pretty Productive. So the laminated envelopes you use month after month after month. You label them for what category that is. When you get paid, so say you get paid twice a month, you at the first of the month and the second part of the month, you pull out the cash for these envelopes. So you divide all of your cash envelopes by either the number of paychecks that you have, or some people that get paid weekly will pull money out the first week and the third week to fund their cash envelopes. When you look at groceries, for an example, that's an area that most people will overspend. If you are doing online ordering like Instacart or anything like that, you would leave the money in your account that you're going to earmark for groceries. So for an example, I pull out $250 the first part of the month, and then I leave the rest in because I do HelloFresh. So HelloFresh comes out of my grocery category. I leave that money in my account so that that money is there, but I keep track in the EveryDollar app of exactly what's coming out of that account so I don't overspend my $500. In the beginning, I did not leave anything in my account. I didn't do anything online because I felt like I needed to get a handle on this budget and I needed to not exceed my budget. So for groceries, I would just take out $250 at the beginning and $250 mid-month. And at the end of the month, if I had money left over, great, it could roll over or it went to savings. But usually this envelope was completely empty. It did make me a better shopper. It did make me more conscious of shopping my pantry and freezer first before I went to the grocery store. So, and it also kept me, putting things back that I didn't need because I didn't want to exceed my budget. Same with eating out. It's amazing how quickly you can go through your eating out category. And this is one area when money has been tight that I've just eliminated. We've just eaten at home. Clothing could be, for me, it's a virtual envelope because I don't buy clothing every month. I don't have small children. So, this could be something that you just leave in the bank for when you need it. So all of these categories can be revised as you need to kind of either shave down or grow, but the number needs to stay the same if this is what you're setting your budget for. If that makes sense, you just need to reallocate within these categories. But cash envelopes are a great way to stop the overspending in the category. If the envelope's empty, it's empty. A couple rules: no borrowing from one envelope to another. Only take the envelope with you that you need. So for an example, if I'm going to the grocery store, I only take my grocery envelope because I don't want to overspend and think, well, I'll just take it out of eating out. So I only take the one envelope. And again, this can be as decorative as you want it to be, or it can be just a simple white envelope that's labeled for a fund. Sinking funds either stay in the bank or they stay at home. So these are long-term savings accounts that you're funding. One other thing I forgot to add on sinking funds is car maintenance, car tags, car insurance, if that's something that you don't pay, are good ones to have for a sinking fund because those tend to be the budget busters that all of a sudden you're like, wait, I just had to pay $150 for my car registration. I wasn't thinking about that. So when you're in the process of starting your first budget and you're writing everything down, go back a couple of months and really look at what you're spending the money on and what you have coming up and what, maybe is quarterly or maybe just once a year. So a lot of times things like tags or taxes are yearly, but you need to plan for those on a monthly basis so that you're not going way over budget when they are due. Okay, so that is Budget 101. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. If you have not subscribed, please do so. We have loved having this community along with our journey. One other thing I just kind of want to mention really quickly is that while we do sell budgeting kits, I use an Erin Condren Deluxe Monthly, don't feel like that is where you need to start. You don't need to spend money to get on a budget. My initial budget was a piece of paper just like this, and this pad of paper that was a grid that just was, I wrote in the bill and then what it was per month and totaled it. So I totaled the month, I totaled it across. And this is literally how I started budgeting. And this worked for me for years. As I got closer to my debt payoff date, I kind of wanted to be motivated. It had been a long journey. And I started doing things that were more decorative. And I started buying budget kits, and I got a deluxe monthly planner, and I started setting it up. And that motivates me, and I'm enjoying that. I see a lot of comments in the Erin Condren groups that I belong to that, they're buying multiple planners and kits just to get started. And honestly, you want to just start where you are and then decide what system that you need. If you already know that's the system you want, great. There's a lot of different items and kits out there if that's what motivates you, but don't let that be your stopping point of getting started. Start on paper if you need to. I always write my budget out on paper first and then go to whatever system you want to use, but don't let that be an obstacle for you to get started. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I mentioned earlier that budgeting is very emotional, and it's based on habits, it's based on your lifestyle, how you grew up, how your spouse grew up. So there's a lot of different conflicts with the way money is and how you handle money and what your security is. So my security is to have the sinking funds and have the account. My husband, because he's not a spender, he just saves everything. That's just his normal. He spends very little money on himself. If he spends any money, it's usually on the house or on the kids. But that's his security. That's his love language. One book that I read that completely changed my habits with money is called Atomic Habits. And the author is James Clear, I think it is. Let's see, I wrote myself a note so I could remember it. Yes, James Clear. So in that book, it talks about the fact that there's a trigger and then a habit related to it. So I found in reading the book, and it's been a couple of years, but I've reread it since, that my trigger was stress or when I was upset with somebody. So if I was mad at my husband, I spent money. If I was stressed at work, I spent money. So that was my trigger. And I never really put two and two together when I was spending money, that there was a reason I was spending money. It wasn't just to go buy something. It was literally a trigger. The other trigger I have is like coupons or sales. I feel like if I don't use that 50% off Michael's coupon, then I'm going to miss out on something. So I would go and spend money that I didn't really have to use the coupon to save the 50% on an item I didn't really need or could afford. So those were kind of my triggers. And as you read through the book, it talks about the trigger, the habit, and how to replace the habit. So instead of spending money, if I'm stressed, I go for a walk. Instead of fear of missing out the coupon, I throw the coupon away. I don't even have it in my wallet. I don't have it there because I know that there's going to be a coupon next week. There's an app. I can look at what's on sale. I know I don't need anything. I recently had to buy a cutter. I waited till there was a 50% coupon, but I had already budgeted the money for the cutter in my fund. So I knew that I could get it, but I was going to, of course, use a coupon because it was half price with the coupon. So that was using the coupon wisely and responsibly versus what I've done in the past, which I would just I'd go to sometimes Hobby Lobby, Joann's, and Michael's all on the same day. Some people went and bought clothes when they were stressed. I didn't. I bought craft supplies. So those are the things that as you read through the book, you'll find out what your triggers are and then how to replace that habit. So the minute the trigger happens, it's so automatic for you to go back to that bad behavior versus create that new habit and that more positive habit. But if you have not read the book, I highly recommend it. Check it out from the library. You can buy it through an Audible book as well too. The other thing is Dave Ramsey, and I know this is a hot debate within this community, but his principles work. He is just, if you listen to a podcast at all, he just calls it like he sees it. So Total Money Makeover is a great book. It's a great starting point. I've read it multiple times in my life. Financial Peace University is great if you, a lot of churches teach it. Even if you don't belong to a church, you can go online and see where it's being taught in your area. And that's a great place to start particularly if you have a reluctant spouse who doesn't want to get on board, is to take them with you to Financial Peace University. Every Dollar app is free. It's great. I do my budget on paper first, and then I transfer that into the app, and then you just update the app every time you spend money out of a category. So for an example, when I fund my envelopes at the beginning of the month, I actually go into that category. So we'll use groceries as an example. If I pull out $250, I go into my app, I go to groceries, I put in a transaction of $250, and then under my description, I put fund envelopes. That way I know that of that $500 budget, $250 is in my envelopes in cash, $250 is still in my account. Then if I order HelloFresh, I take out the $61 for HelloFresh, so that at the end of the month, you can always see what you have left in a category. It's a great tool. It's completely free. I know there's other budgeting tools out there as well. That one has just worked for me because the categories are set up the same way that I set up my budget. So again, if you have not subscribed, please do so. Hit the bell for notification. Good luck on your budgeting journey. Remember, the beginning is the hardest. Plan for the first 3 months to be uncomfortable. It's not fun. Believe me, it can really make or break your mood. So just know that this too, once you get a handle of it, the amount of peace and security you feel is incredible. So good luck on your journey. Please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching.